So we have this hierarchy where there's a giant male figure, God figure, and he is telling us that if we don't behave in a certain way, we are going to be punished. And the punishments go from, in this life, just having bad things happen to us and so forth. But of course, the clincher is for all eternity being subjected to horrible torments and tortures, being burned and flayed and everything, all these awful things that you can think of. And so if we don't believe in this story, in this God and his Son who loves us, he loves you, he will torture you forever and ever. And the amazing thing is that because of this superstition, people are very afraid, obviously. They're afraid to step out of line. And they're afraid also when anybody else steps out of line. And they become themselves very oppressive in this regard, where they don't allow anyone else not to believe this. And I don't know if this is a fear of collective punishment, that, if we have a stranger in our midst who doesn't believe as we do, the milk goes off and the grain goes bad and we start to starve and the water dries up, and so we have to get rid of this stranger in our midst who doesn't believe this. Because they don't seem to be content to leave you alone in your disbelief. And here's where those of us who even are not under this belief system, where we're terrified of not believing it, we are subjected to other people's aggression and oppression. And violent speech, hate speech. I personally can attest to this, that if I'm not going along with and the strains become ever more fanatical, by the book interpretation of Christianity, the carriers of that perspective become very nasty, very hateful, very aggressive, and even threatening physical harm. Certainly they are engaging in spiritual, psychological, emotional abuse, telling us we're going to hell, we're going to be punished and so forth. But then there's also sometimes a physical aggression that we have to be afraid of. So even if we would risk the wrath of God himself after death, and we would say, okay, that's my choice to risk that. So we cannot escape human beings on this plane making our lives miserable. So we're under violent oppression of Christianity from its most fervent carriers.
Would you characterize these fervent carriers as behaving in a most anti-Christian manner?
Well, it depends on how you see Christianity. The Christianity of the past, we've had militant Jesus. We have Jesus rifles. So they're acting pretty Christian if they've got in their scopes that they're supposed to kill the infidel, so to speak. So.
But what part of "thou shalt not kill" do they not understand?
Well, then they say, well, if you're killing, it's actually "thou shalt not murder." So if it's someone like us, it's murder if you kill that person. But if it's someone who's not like us, it's just killing, and who cares? So, but of course, then there's the case for Christian love and charity and mercy and tenderness and kindness, loving kindness, and so forth. And that is I would say it's, based on the history, that is definitely a modern phenomenon, and that has to do with other people in the recent past, really, in the last couple centuries, risking the wrath of the mob by claiming a different interpretation of Jesus. The different interpretation of Jesus in the 19th century became very humanistic. He was the kindly shepherd, not the militant, not the punisher, not the stern father or whatever. And so, but even that was resisted by the puritanical elements that the sternness has to be there. But we've had the conditioning in the last couple centuries of this loving Jesus, and this loving Jesus I mean, that's a good hook to use when people are being hateful. Say, would Jesus? What would Jesus do? Would he be so hateful and angry and hostile and aggressive and so forth? But then now we are moving into a new interpretation of Jesus as a mythical archetype who, in fact, represents natural phenomena that we can all relate to, that does not have a cultural connection, a cultural label, an ethnicity, a color, a gender. It's the sun. How does Jesus as a myth impact society? Well, my take, of course, is that it can only be good. If you weigh in the history of Christianity, it is not entirely bad, but so many deaths, so much cultural destruction, entire ethnicities wiped out. My ancestors were destroyed, my ancestral heritage, great cultural dignity has been destroyed. Our history has been annihilated and built over and so forth and so on. And so that's gone, of course, but it isn't just saying, okay, that's bad and needs to be stopped or removed. It's what does it all mean? What are the meanings behind the myths? What is the purpose of these myths? Why did they exist in the first place, that they were taken and historicized and Judaized and so forth? They reflect our external world, as well as many spiritual concepts that we can also embrace that are not we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's obviously some good stuff within Christianity, and there were certain good intentions as well. And that so, but to insist that this character above all others was real and they weren't, and so forth and so on, is really it's such a disservice not only to those other cultures, but it also is just, it's not honest. And that kind of dishonesty can never be helpful to the planet. But, going beyond the historical and looking at the mythical and finding out what it represents, and it represents astrotheology and nature worship and so forth, this can help to restore balance to the planet in a very, very profoundly significant way. We need balance. If we want to survive and maintain this world, we have to bring the balance back to a not just a respect, but a reverence, a deep connection to the earth, like we find with native cultures that did not get ripped up and destroyed.